This is CBC Vancouver News.
The guy looked up at me and he's like, oh man, he's like, I don't like the feeling of this.
Linking wildfire smoke to the death of a young BC boy. The coroner is looking into what happened.
Here's where my trail goes in right here.
And as a record amount of land burns in BC, Canadian soldiers arrive to help busy wildfire crews battling hundreds of blazes. And
giving out a ticket for not having insurance on something you can't get insured is kind of nonsensical to me.
nowhere to ride? How can electric unicycles fit into our communities? Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. We start with a tragic story in central BC. The coroner is investigating wildfire smoke as a contributing factor in the death of a 9-year-old boy with asthma. Tanya Fletcher has more from his grieving family and the province's warning to others.
Carter Vi was like many other 9-year-olds. He loved music and soccer, says his mom.
He loved his family so hard.
Last week, Carter was playing outside in the morning and seemed fine. His parents say the wildfire smoke worsened as the day went on. Given his asthma, they monitored him closely. By dinner time, he was coughing uncontrollably. That's when they rushed him to the hospital in 100 Mile House.
When I carried him out from the house to the truck, he kind of looked up at me and he's like, oh man, he's like, I don't like the feeling of this.
Inside the ER, they describe an army of staff performing CPR for 25 minutes. It wasn't enough. Carter died at 7:20 that night.
This is obviously a terrible, terrible tragedy and every parent's worst nightmare.
BC's coroner confirms wildfire smoke was a factor in Carter's death. This case has now sparked a provincial safety bulletin warning of the dangers of wildfire smoke.
When it comes to air quality, it is monitored on a daily basis, and that I think people need to pay attention to that.
Oh, it's far more common than we think.
In fact, this respirologist says 1 in 4 patients he sees during wildfire season is related to air pollution.
We know wildfires can trigger asthma attacks.
And experts only expect more cases linked to air quality in the future.
We have levels in northern BC in particular that are about 40 times higher than what the World Health Organization recommends. So we're starting to understand a lot more about this, but this is, as just the tip of the iceberg.
The advice from doctors, if you have breathing problems, stay inside as much as possible.
I'm hoping that people realize how quickly it can turn, because we had his asthma under control. We were so diligent.
And yet a family, an entire community is left to mourn a little boy whose smile lit up a room. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
To the rest of the wildfire situation in BC now, and it is a dynamic one. First, Highway 20 is still closed, the only road connection between the mainland and the coastal community of Bella Coola. As the CBC's Saurabh Sandhu tells us, the lack of accessibility is making people there very anxious.
As Highway 20 closed on Sunday afternoon, Sean Scallion was one of the last drivers to pass through the fire.
I'm glad we got here. But I'm feeling for those that were left behind.
Scallion was in Bella Coola to perform at a music festival. Alerted by the news of the Young Creek fire, he immediately decided to return to his home in Quesnel.
They got dirt, gravel road, a lot of steep pitches, lots of switchbacks. That road itself is its own kind of adventure, but then you throw a big plume of smoke and visible flames, it kind of made it even more nerve-wracking.
The fire grew very quickly from the time it was discovered on Saturday until kind of last night. We're mapping it at about 2,500 hectares right now. It has crossed Highway 20.
And that's left the coastal community without a reliable way out.
If anybody had any emergency, like a heart attack or broken bones or anything, they had to wait here for a long time.
Late this afternoon, good news for those trying to leave or get to the Bella Coola Valley. 6 convoys, 3 in and 3 out, were announced to get people in and out, but meant for essential travel only. BC Wildfire Centre says favourable weather has helped dampen the danger.
The growth of the fires slowed considerably today with the arrival of some cooler, wetter conditions. They've had about 10 millimeters of rain.
Elsewhere in the province, the number of active fires continues to hover around 400 mark. With strained resources, the Canadian Armed Forces will begin deploying today in BC, positioning teams in Prince George and Kamloops to help bolster fire crews. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
People in a First Nation near Cranbrook have been ordered out of their homes because of a growing wildfire close to the airport there. Officials say the St. Mary's River blaze is now estimated at 300 hectares and may have been caused by downed power lines. It was fueled by strong wind, as you can see, making it hard to fight from the air. The St. Mary's Indian Band says it ordered people in 52 homes to leave, while 9 are on evacuation alert. And the Regional District of East Kootenay has also put 23 other nearby properties on alert. Flights at Canadian Rockies International Airport were also cancelled for several hours. And new tonight, an evacuation alert has been issued for 18 properties at Bald Range Creek near West Kelowna. Crews on the ground and from the air are trying to contain a wildfire on the west side of Okanagan Lake. It's burning about 15 kilometers north of the city and is now estimated at 5 hectares. BC, meanwhile, has earned another dubious distinction. We've now set a record for the most area burned in a wildfire season. Take a look. The modern record was broken over the weekend. 13,933 square kilometers have burned as of today. That's just slightly more than 2018. Despite drought conditions at their highest levels in parts of BC, most cities and towns are saying water reservoir levels remain unaffected, at least for now. Last week, the province asked people to start saving more water. Though no official restrictions have been imposed, still many municipalities say they have no worries about water levels. Some, though, like Kelowna, West Kelowna and Nanaimo, are flagging concerns and asking residents to cut their water use. Metro Vancouver says the most important thing you can do is watch your outdoor water use.
We have currently that you can only water 1 day a week, and we really need people to stick to that, and if possible, to not water their lawns at all.
1.5 billion litres or more of water are normally used in the summer. Walsh says Metro Vancouver's water usage was 20% higher in May and June than it was last year, and it says data shows people are not cutting their water use. The City of Vancouver, meanwhile, has handed out more than $77,000 worth of water restriction fines so far this summer. Every year, watering restrictions are in effect from May 1st to October 15th. The city says as of yesterday, it's doled out 457 warnings and over 300 tickets. Engineers note that while the number of warnings is much higher than last summer, the heat started in May, prompting an increase in water use that grinds on. An end to the more than 4-month-long bus strike in the Eastern Fraser Valley may be coming to an end. The union representing striking workers is recommending they accept a mediator-proposed settlement. First Transit, the employer, has until Thursday to accept or reject the recommendations, and any deal will also have to be ratified by union members. It's been one of the longest transit strikes in BC history. More than 200 workers, including bus operators, mechanics, utility workers and washers, have been off the job since March 20th, asking for benefits and wages closer to their counterparts on the Lower Mainland. First Transit says it's reviewing Vince Reddy's final report. You may have seen one zipping along your street. Electric unicycles have a very unique look and are becoming a popular way to get around. But as Joe Ballard shows us, a lack of regulation means riders have found themselves on the wrong side of the law.
Gabe Kwok was riding his electric unicycle on a shared bike road when he was pulled over by a police officer.
He told me that apparently these things aren't allowed to be ridden out in the public and only in private property.
Kwok was slapped with an almost $600 ticket. The violation, driving without insurance.
You can't even get insurance on these vehicles. Some people have tried, so giving out a ticket for not having insurance on something you can't get insured is kind of nonsensical to me.
This rider was hit with the same ticket.
It sucks that basically I have the option of fighting this in court, getting a lawyer to fight it, or it's going to go on my driver's license.
The owner of this shop says electric unicycles are soaring in popularity.
I'm not surprised because when I got on one for the first time, it was an incredible experience and it seemed like the most practical way to commute in an urban city.
These are actually self-balancing. You can't fall forward, you can't fall backwards. You kind of just kick off and you're going.
In the last 6 months, he says he's seen more than 10 tickets for electric unicycle riders, adding that it highlights the lack of infrastructure and regulation around the fast-growing form of transportation.
The one that I find most interesting would be this guy here.
The patent?
Yeah, the patent.
Right now, the Motor Vehicle Act does not permit people using devices like electric unicycles. But with the growing popularity, the Vancouver Police Department recognizes the need for more clarity.
I do think while they're great, there are rules, and the rules are set in place to keep the riders and other people on the road safe. But definitely more discussion needs to be had between us, between the city, ICBC, just on how we can better coordinate moving forward on how we can go about this.
Well, if unicyclists are having so many issues on the roads, perhaps the solution is moving to the sidewalks. But that could result in an entirely separate violation, albeit a much cheaper ticket, only $81.
But experts worry it sends the wrong message.
It's a lot more incentivizing for us riders to ride on the sidewalk, but we're of course advocating against that because it's far more dangerous for pedestrians.
The Ministry of Transportation recently amended the Motor Vehicle Act to explore the safe use of emerging clean technologies through pilot projects. Future changes welcomed by the riding community.
These things are here to stay. They can try to slow down change, but they can't stop it.
Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
On Friday, BC quietly lifted the requirement for regulatory colleges of health professionals to collect and disclose COVID-19 vaccination status. This means chiropractors, dentists, naturopaths, and psychologists in private practice no longer have to report whether or not they've gotten the shots. Well, this also applies to doctors and nurses. Anyone working in BC's public health system is still required to get vaccinated. Things could go one of two ways in the long-running Surrey policing saga this week. It could end or mark the start of a legal battle between the provincial government and City Hall. For more on this, we turn to our ever-reliable Justin McElroy. Justin, things could change on Wednesday. Tell us why.
Yeah, here we go again, Dan. Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth at a press conference today announced that on Wednesday he would make his decision on the Surrey policing conundrum. Now, it was 3 months ago that he put in conditions for Surrey to follow if they wanted to get rid of the Surrey Police Service, as new Mayor Brenda Locke has promised. If not, he said he retained the authority to keep them with the Surrey Police Service. So he's gotten those reports from the city. He's looked at this over the last 3 months. He says that Wednesday he will be making that decision. And there's lots of predictions going back and forth, but a lot of people looking at what the province has talked about over the past few weeks in terms of questions about the RCMP around vacancies and skepticism over Surrey's report believe that he very well might choose to go to a conflict with Surrey and say, you're forced to stick with the Surrey Police Service.
I don't know that this is the last we'll hear about the issue, but we are getting some strong signals from the province that they are looking to find a way to bring the issue to a resolution. And constitutionally speaking, the buck ultimately stops with the provincial government. So they have some tools in their arsenal that if they really want to force the issue, they can do that.
And there's lots of ways that they could do legislatively or through an order in council. For her part, Mayor Locke hasn't shut the door over to taking legal action if the province were to do that, saying that they will talk with their lawyers at that time. Most of the time in these cases, the province does get their way. Municipalities are creatures of the province, but we'll have to see hypothetically what happens if the province decides to go down that route and the city follows through with legal action.
Justin, we also heard news today about the federal government considering changes to the RCMP across the country. How could that impact BC's decision?
Yeah, an interesting report in the Toronto Star today saying that the federal government is exploring looking at changing the purpose of the RCMP from getting rid of contract policing, which happens a lot in British Columbia, and is it with the case with the Surrey RCMP detachment, and more towards a model that would focus on cybercrime, national security issues, and other stuff that aren't necessarily on the ground. And of all the places in Canada that would have an impact, the biggest is in BC. And here's a couple charts to show why. The first here, the number of contract policing officers by province as of 2019. You can see British Columbia far and away the most RCMP officers, Quebec and Ontario having their own provincial police forces. But even if you look at it as a percentage of police forces, because of course BC has a much higher population than say the Atlantic provinces, BC still comes up on top with the total percentage that are under RCMP jurisdiction as opposed to local or regional. So when the province is deciding what to do over the next few days and what their announcement will be, yes, it's a city versus province conflict, but what happens in Ottawa may dictate the route that they decide to go forward with.
Thank you for the perspective, Justin. Much appreciated. An 11-year-old British Columbia boy is hoping to be on the podium at the end of this month at the World Dwarf Games in Germany. Duncan's Declan Forcier is competing in running, soccer, basketball, and throwing events. Of the 46 athletes on Team Canada, he's the only one representing BC. He says his goal, very simple.
Getting lots of medals, making friends.
Do you even have room for any more medals?
Yeah, probably.
Declan also plays hockey and baseball with children of average height. He was born with achondroplasia, the most common form of dwarfism, but his mother says that has not held him back, and he's been training every day ahead of the games.
So we do need to protect ourselves. We know that there's no safe threshold for exposure to smoke.
How does wildfire smoke worsen climate change? An environmental studies professor is going to tell us more right after this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Good to be back with you. Western parts of Canada are still dealing with hundreds of active wildfires, as we know. But this year's extreme weather is not unique to this large country. Climate experts see what's happening as part of a worsening trend, a global crisis that needs more attention and concrete action. Anayat Singh has more.
The planet looks angry this summer. The world experienced the hottest week ever recorded, and places like the southern US, parts of Europe and China are sweltering. Add to that devastating flooding in Asia and wildfires in North America, including here in Canada. The ongoing climate crisis is bringing misery everywhere. This resident of Delhi, India's capital, says the swelling Yamuna River has damaged her crops and destroyed her belongings. All scientific evidence points to a warming planet directly linked to human activities. Carbon emissions have already pushed average global temperatures 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, a seemingly small number that belies major suffering affecting vulnerable communities around the world.
So the further global warming goes up, the more you're going to start sampling more extreme weather. So things that used to be kind of rare events become relatively common.
And there's more to come. The El Niño weather pattern caused by periodic warming in parts of the Pacific Ocean has returned this year. It tends to disrupt weather across the world, but this time it's compounding the already dramatic impacts of climate change.
Seeing the human toll of that is really kind of distressing to see, even if it's kind of what we were expecting.
The world's two largest emitters, the US and China, are holding high-level climate talks this week. The suffering of millions across the globe is now adding fresh urgency as the planet bakes. Anayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
Back to our top story now. As wildfires burn across this province, the parents of a 9-year-old boy say their child died after a severe asthma attack made worse by wildfire smoke. The BC Coroner Service is investigating his death, which happened last Tuesday near the family's home in 100 Mile House. His parents tell CBC News the coroner told them his death was likely a severe asthma attack exacerbated by smoky air. Earlier today, Arnita Bath spoke with an environmental sciences professor about the potential effects of smoky air on more people.
Michael, you've been looking at the relationship between smoke and health for years. What can you tell us about the health outcomes associated with moderate or very high air quality risk?
Yes, Anita. So exposure to smoke is an evolving field in science and in medicine, and we do know some pretty clear things. One is that it is lifetime cumulative exposure that creates a problem, but it's also short-term acute exposures to really high levels of smoke like we're experiencing right now. So a lot of people who are experiencing this may just be experiencing sore throat and nose and things like that, but some are actually experiencing more traumatic kinds of things, including asthma attacks and even strokes and heart attacks.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, I think a lot of people haven't really thought of somebody actually dying in a situation like this. Are there many recorded instances of people dying from air pollution at this point?
Well, there are. They're not as clear-cut as perhaps this one. The World Health Organization estimates that upwards of about 10 million people die per year from air pollution itself. But we know that that number is probably a significant underestimate. And I think that in North America in particular, in the last couple of years, we're going to see a shortening of lifespans, and we're going to see higher rates of cancer and things like that going forward because of all of our summers and wildfires.
Beyond personal protective equipment like masks, is there anything else that the government should be doing to help us avoid the negative health outcomes of smoke?
Yeah, there is. So we have to kind of parse it in two ways. One is indoor air quality. So I think there needs to be a lot more support, perhaps even incentives for people to buy HEPA filtration for their homes. And then the second part of it is people that are working outdoors. Perhaps we're going to have to shift our work hours for people that are working outdoors so that they can avoid the worst of the smoke and the heat. No longer 9 to 5, it might be 6 to 2. So yes, there are things that are going to happen as a result of climate change and these related phenomena.
Michael Mehta in Kamloops is an environmental studies professor at Thompson Rivers University.
And here's how this morning began. Lots of clouds, even some rain. Was not much, though. Darius Madavi will have your BC-wide forecast right after this.
There's no smoking in any of the interior areas of this ship. This includes all passenger areas, washrooms, stairwells, and vehicle decks.
The no smoking message greeted all ferry users today as they arrived on board. Here on the Queen of Coquitlam, the edict was so new that ferry officials were just beginning to put no smoking signs up.
Because it's a little early, the truck drivers haven't arrived yet.
Chief Steward Kajewski has an added problem. Not only does he have to enforce the edict, but he's also a smoker.
I'm kind of in limbo right now. I don't know what to do. I'm going outside, like the rest of the passengers.
I think it's an excellent idea. Last year, I had spent quite a bit of time in the ferries. I was over at the Columbia Center in Vancouver there. And I come up into a smoking section, sat down to have a cigarette. A mother come, sat down in front of me with a little baby who she was breastfeeding. She lit up a cigarette. My smoke was going towards the baby. Couldn't handle it. I had to get up and leave. I put out my cigarette. So I fully agree with it.
I agree with it. You do? Yeah, oh yeah. I don't mind at all. I don't want anybody else to suffer from my problem.
I just started smoking again. I had quit and I'm started again, and I wished I hadn't. I'd like to see it banned completely.
If they want to segregate us, so be it. They have their own rights too, non-smokers. And I don't like smoking either, even though I sit out here and do it.
This was a holiday crowd. When the regular riders come back tomorrow, there may be some grousing. And when winter comes, the complaints might get louder.
I used to sit here and drink my coffee and smoke my cigar when I made these crossings, but not anymore. Not because BC Ferries now ban smoking aboard their vessels, but because I quit the weed 2 months ago. Bob Gillingham, CBC News, aboard the Queen of Coquitlam.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver Inbox. CBC Vancouver is proud to be the exclusive media partner of the 35th Annual Vancouver Queer Film Festival, August 10th to 20th. For festival program and tickets, visit outonscreen.com/VQFF. And CBC Radio 1 presents the CBC Massey Lectures, The Age of Insecurity, with filmmaker, writer, and political organizer Astra Taylor on September 22nd.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with science and climate specialist Darius Madavi. A few raindrops across a few parts of Metro Vancouver this morning, Darius, but not enough, I would say.
I agree with not enough. That's a good way to put it. I felt about 6 raindrops on my way into work.
When you can count them?
It's not the best, right? Yeah, we're hoping for a little bit more. You can see here on the Lower Mainland, we're still in the sort of red, orange, yellow fire danger zone, which means still significant, the island also. But other parts of the province where we've seen really elevated fire danger are doing better than they have been. I looked at the forecasts nationwide, and it seems like this will hold out for about a week. And I think it really shows what we saw today. Is a good example of why we're seeing this lower fire danger. You'll notice temperatures really not that high, certainly not what we were seeing last week and the week before when fire danger was really elevated. The 30-degree threshold is really what we look to for really severe fire danger, along with a couple other metrics, including really low levels of precipitation and humidity, which again is not what we're seeing. In the southern interior today, we saw plenty of rain. Again, didn't quite make it here. I think Whistler saw a bit, but really nothing significant. But other parts of the interior, the thunder showers today did bring with them a lot of precipitation, so we didn't see that dry lightning that's really concerning. So good news there. Tomorrow, it looks like we're going to see more of the same. The Northeast still not able to escape those showers and thunder showers that they've been seeing recently, but some more rain for some of the central parts of the province. Low likelihood for Prince George, but still possible. Mostly what they're seeing there is smoke, really blocking out the sun and keeping temperatures low. But for the southern parts of the interior, nothing but sun. And the same story here in Vancouver. Looks like we're going to have plenty of sun in the week ahead.
It is astonishingly consistent. Thanks very much.
Nothing but consistent, even if we don't want it to be.
Indeed. Thanks. And that's your late news for Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.